Hi guys, what's going on, and welcome back to another episode of Total War Arena. So, a little bit different today. This is my first video I've done on Arena using a replay. So, it's a little bit different. I've not used the replays before in any of my videos. I've always tried to do them live, and that sometimes works quite well in the sense that you sort of see my interaction and my thoughts as I'm playing through, but it's sometimes kind of a lot harder for me because it means I have to shoot videos like 3 or 4 times because we sometimes get that game when I just make massive mistakes, or I don't play very well, or the game just doesn't play out very well. So I thought it'd be interesting to have a look at some of the replay matches I have. I've just been, particularly with the bonuses we've got in the game at the moment, given it's open beta week, I've been playing through with some of the Germans, with Germanicus as the Romans, the Roman Infantry. So initially I pushed into this forest, this little golf ball forest at the bottom. But then the enemy rapidly captured this spot point up here, and I didn't know what I was against, and I was completely on my own, so I sort of started to pull back again. I feared there's a reasonable chance it was going to be archers up on the hill, and if I ventured over here I was just going to get shot to pieces. So I pulled back and sort of held a bit of a defensive line over here, since we had friendly players doing the same sort of thing around these parts of the map as well. So while there's not a lot on, the benefit of the replay is we can hit a slight fast forward. I'll be very interested to know, well, artillery cleverly throwing some rocks down at the spotting points, as we know there are enemy troops there holding that capture flag. Since we now... yes, I'd like to know what you think about the replay. That's what I was trying to get at. Do you prefer the replays like this? Is this acceptable content to you, or do you much prefer it when I just sort of record them and play and talk at the same time? I'd really like if you could let me know in the comments down below what you think, sort of whether it's acceptable gameplay or not. That'd be really helpful. So at this point I was thinking the enemy cavalry had got involved in a bit of a fight down here. Quite a strange fight. I'm not quite sure why these tier 3 raiders engaged by high tier cavalry and barbarian infantry. I think they were trying to get the archers, but I mean that was just never going to happen. So I start to move down to the south, since there's very little support up here than a couple of phalanxmen who aren't active in the game. And so I decide to move down here and see what's going on, particularly as we then start to get enemy heavy infantry, Roman infantry, starting to push up the gap. So I try and block up this gap here. I don't want to commit everything, so I send one unit of infantry in to the rear of the enemy raider cavalry to try and provide a bit of assistance there, but I keep 2 units back on the slope to try and provide a bit of defence. So I see enemies coming up, so I engage these 2. In hindsight, I should probably just have used 1 unit, because this unit, if he knew what he was doing, he could have come into my flank here. But he didn't. He did try to chase off the barbarian infantry instead, which in the end chose to take the fight, which was good for me. So as these raiders are starting to die, I thought these are no longer a threat, so I turn around and I get a nice heavy infantry charge after I throw my pillars into the back of this enemy hastati here. Like that. That gave me a nice good hit and a rear flanking damage. So my units here are holding off. Obviously I am higher tier, and I've popped vengeance on these fights, I think. Oh, perhaps I didn't. I thought I did, obviously I didn't. So these things, I think I had popped vengeance at some point soon in these fights, so I'm holding these guys off quite nicely, and then they try and for some reason walk out of the fight in the middle of, and obviously going slowly they just get absolutely massacred there really quickly. And this is the point, yeah, I've popped vengeance now in all my fights. So these guys, I try and move down to engage another unit of enemy hastati that are moving up, and by this point we've caused massive amounts of damage. We're getting quite a lot of aggression points already. It's working pretty well. I can see that this is a 1 fight now. I can't really lose. These guys are nearly completely dead. Even their tier 5 units are completely dead. And we can start to engage the rear flank of these hastati and just completely surround them. So that's good. So obviously it's a 1 fight there. Completely crush those remaining enemy infantry units. And then press on and attack these guys as well. And there's just nothing left of them. And we really didn't take very many casualties in that process. All my units are all above sort of around 75%. Still got 3/4 health. Still really combat effective units, which is exactly what we want. So then I sort of take a break and to see where we are. Still a pretty close battle in terms of the relative strengths. This is where I probably make a bit of a mistake here. I don't play very well. So I was looking around. I was a bit worried there's quite a few enemy cavalry units, and I know we've got a lot of archers, we've got our artillery, and I didn't think there was that much defence on base. So I start to begin to head back to try and see if I can sort of engage any of these enemy cavalry units, see if I can get stuck into a bit of a fight here. And this was an error, really. Trying to chase cavalry units around, you know, is never really going to work. The artillery, in hindsight, was actually fairly well protected. They got a unit of hastati, 2 units of hastati with them to defend, and they got all these, obviously the infantry stakes as well, which could be used to protect them. So these cavalry units sort of were never really going to be able to damage them too much. These archers took a little bit of damage, but nothing major. So let's just hit fast forward as I sort of aimlessly wander around base a bit. I think I might throw a few peelers at someone at some point, but I think that's about as far as it goes. Yeah, throw a few javelins. And then I managed to catch a few of them as they tried to charge these AFK phalanxmen, but because I didn't quite get a straight line on my charge, my heavy infantry charge missed. So that's one tip. Really got to be careful. It's the same as cavalry charges. Once you hit your charge, your people will run in a straight line, and obviously attack them or do damage to anything they hit in that line. But if you're off at an angle and you hit the charge, or you don't quite get that turn so you're nice and straight at the enemy before you hit the charge, and then you will charge off at an angle and you will miss the target you're aiming for, as I did then. So sort of sometimes a little bit of patience really is worthwhile. So it's at this point I realised that I'd wasted my time. The enemy cavalry just didn't really do a lot, and I just spent these quite high tier units for this game just wandering around base, and that was an error. I should have pushed straight on to try and support the units down here much earlier on. That would have been much more beneficial use of my units. So we'll flick back into fast forward. So as I'm now realised, so I start to push back towards the enemy base. Kind of still exposed, so my thought was, initially I was thinking down here, but then I think I changed my mind and thought it would be better to go into the forest. At least that provides me with some degree of cover from the enemy side. Plus there's enemy dog handlers in the forest, which I feel I can tackle quite comfortably if I can get them engaged into a fight. But obviously I've lost visibility on them now. No one owns the command post. There's a random single horseman came wandering out, but he died. So we don't know where these enemy dog handlers have gone. So I start to push into the forest and try to hold some sort of sense of formation. I don't want to just form up into a blob, which is so easy to do. But particularly with infantry, you want to try and hold some sort of line. So I start to push through the forest like so, as we are doing now. I keep pushing, but I've obviously not found anything. So I know the dog handlers have either pulled back or gone up the hill. So I find they have gone up the hill. So this is where sort of I have to make some decisions. I decide, because there's still quite a few enemy units down the bottom of the hill, and I only saw one handler go up the hill to capture this flag point, I just push one unit up the hill. These Principes are pretty solid units. I know they can handle themselves quite nicely. So I leave 2 units at the bottom to defend and push 1 unit up to look at this dog handler. And as expected, I only find 1 dog handler. Okay, so it's interesting. So I start to go after them. They launch the dogs. I've just managed to activate a heavy infantry charge. No, I didn't. So I'm stuck with these dogs, but the dogs are not particularly effective against the Romans. They're much more effective against cavalry or against enemy pikemen. So I'll start to try and chase these dog units down. Obviously they're quicker than me, so I don't stand much of a chance of being able to really catch them up. And I think it's at this point I realise that that's a lost chase. So I did a good amount of damage to the dogs. Almost their dog units almost eradicated, and we provide a bit of spotting for our archers. We managed to get a good amount of damage in on them before we lose them into the forest. So at that point I think, right, I'm not going to chase them through the forest. I'll never be able to catch them unless they actually choose to fight me. So I come back down to reassemble my troops on the bottom. And then, for some reason, I'm not sure if this person is AFK or just thinks he's in a good position or something. He's just standing there. Now, I know we have quite a bit of friendly artillery support, so I leave him. At the same time, we get charged by units of dogs at the bottom. But the handlers actually keep out of the fight and immediately pull the dogs back. So they do very little damage to us, so it's kind of a pointless charge on their part. So I move up and apply a bit of pressure on them, but don't try and actually engage anything else. There's obviously we've still got a fair bit of time, 5 minutes left in the game, and we are winning in terms of relative strength, but it's still kind of close. So I see no point in actually pushing up to engage these hastati. That's something a lot of people seem to do in this game, is force fights that don't always need to be fought. I could fight these hastati, lose another 20, 30, 40% of my unit health and kill them, but why? Then they're no threat to me. They're just being picked off by archers and artillery very rapidly, and there's no reason for me to worry about engaging them. They're not a threat at all to me. Now, it's at this point, obviously I hadn't been looking properly at the minimap. I was dealing with this, and I was moving these units around looking to see if there's anything hidden in this forest down here. I hadn't noticed that we've got quite a few enemy units starting to apply pressure to our base, which was obviously an unfortunate error. Thankfully, we've got artillery to sort of keep them pinned down. And as I start to push up here, it takes me a while to realise my error. At some point, I do. So I was thinking at this point I was controlling this unit individually. I was just keeping these units watching these hastati, make sure they didn't do anything, try and charge our archers or anything. And I was just pushing up with this one unit here to see what I could find in the enemy base, and maybe to start capping. So at this point, you see, I realised that we were being captured. I should have noticed that a lot quicker. You should always need to keep a close eye on base capture and on the minimap, because a lot of the enemy units are in our base. And that was just silly on my part. So I realised my error, and I start to send my units back. I'm using the heavy infantry charge just to give them a little bit of extra speed, but they're basically on the way back to base. Since I know I'm fairly confident there's no enemies between where these units are and the actual base, I just set them off doing that, and then I come back to controlling this unit in the short term. I didn't think there was any point in sending this unit back, since it's such a long way to the enemy over there. These archers obviously just dealing with these started. These guys are obviously just AFK, so they're not really any threat to us. So I move around to start to look to capture base. So we have some friendly barbarians move up as well. Wow, I'm not even going to try and pronounce that. But there is some enemy phalanxmen, tier 5, quite a strong unit. So I was going to push around this way, but I see these guys are going for our barbarians, so I decide to come down, see they get stuck into these phalanxmen. I see no reason why we shouldn't be able to kill them. I think I've got my vengeance back at this point. So we activate our heavy infantry charge. Good bit of charge, although they did more damage to me. They had a more powerful charge than I did against them. But at this point, I activated vengeance, and well, once I've done that, it's a one fight. Really, they don't stand much of a chance. As you can see, as vengeance starts to take effect, the amount of damage I do starts to ramp up and up and up and up, more and more and more, and we really start to pull away on the damage. And our friendly barbarian infantry charge into the back and lend their support, and these phalanxmen just get absolutely massacred. They did well not to rout. They actually held their ground completely right to the bitter end. Quite a good on their part. And obviously these dog units I was chasing around earlier are still alive. So we slaughter those phalanxmen, which I was pleased with, and I start to push on to see if we can get engaged with these dogs, because our friendly barbarians got involved with these dog handlers. At the same time, I am also continually flicking between my units that I've got coming back to base. The artillery has done a good job of providing base decapping support, and we had some friendly disconnected warriors, which could be commanded by anyone, to also defend as well. So at this point, I'm looking what do I want to do. I don't really want to get completely caught up with a fight on people outside the cap circle. I'd rather get involved and deal with the threat that is the people inside the cap circle. So I disconnect one unit off, activate a charge, and miss. We do get the rear flanking effect still because we caught about one man, but it wasn't a particularly great move. And I push the other unit into the enemy base to try and get a bit more involved in the fighting. The other unit over here I just leave in the capping circle now because I'm focusing on base defense more. So yes, these guys get involved and I pop vengeance. So these guys are dead. These tier 4 warriors are no threat to me. These guys get involved in a bit more of a fight. I do also pop vengeance as well, which is obviously we soon start to rack up a lot of damage. But then all of a sudden there's quite a lot of enemy units here. I should conceivably probably have started to pull these units back immediately to try and engage these and lend support, because these guys are cleverly outflanking me, trying to ruin my morale, which is obviously do quite effectively because they rear flank me and my units rout. Obviously, it's a bit of a tough one. I don't know if I'd say that was an error on my part or not. Part of it was, but the part of it was if I just engaged these units on the outside and they capped in the time that I was doing that, that would not have been an effective play. So for me, it was worth the sacrifice to attack these. And we did still do a good amount of damage to the high strength enemy units, even though we did lose an entire unit. So then, with these guys dead, I turn around and bring these units back into the friendly base to continue decapping. We've still got a full strength unit for starting, so I'm not too worried. And we are capping the enemy base quite effectively now, so I'm not too worried about anything like that. And we've got our infantry charge back, so these guys aren't quite sure what they want to do. They sort of dally a little bit, throw some scorched earth at me, but it means I get a nice charge off in against them. 1500 damage. You know, we're a higher tier unit, so it wasn't a problem. And then we get the victory because we run out of time. Thankfully, our relative strength was far higher than that of our enemies, and it turned into quite a nice game. We got very high aggression damage in the end, and that all panned out quite well as we sort of wanted it to. So, how we go? I don't know if you enjoyed that sort of video as a bit of a replay video. It's a little bit different to sort of some of the normal videos we do, but I play quite a lot of on and off without recording, just on my own, and it's kind of nice sometimes to watch these replays to see sort of the results that we get. I get some nice battles sometimes, and I think it's kind of interesting to see them. So we can't always record them. So hopefully you've enjoyed that video. If you have, let me know what you think down in the comments below. Give the video a like. It really helps when you like the video. That's sort of the most useful thing you can do because it increases it in the YouTube search algorithm. Subscribe to the channel if you're new. We've got lots more Total War Arena content coming. And I've been grinding through these tier 8 Italian nobles, so we'll soon have some tier 9 Praetorian gameplay to come. So thanks for watching, guys, and I shall see you on the next video.